Well, hello everyone. Hi, this is Lance Edwards, and welcome to this edition of Greenlight REI, where we teach you the successful real estate lifestyle. And great joy to be with you guys here today. And this is a live session. If you were, what is today? Today is October 23rd, 2019. It is 2:00 p.m. Central, and I'm broadcasting to you from Dallas, Texas. Where I've got an event starting here tomorrow, training event, teaching people how to get started in small apartments. And so this, of course, if you're here live, here's the benefit of being here live. You're going to be able to get questions answered. You'll be able to spit your questions. And let me go ahead and tell you how that's going to work. You're going to enter your questions through the chat box through the webinar, and I'll be answering them at the end of my presentation. Now, if you're listening to the podcast, which means we've already done this in this recorded version, then you're not going to have the benefit of being able to submit questions. But if you'd like to get in our list so you can join these future sessions live, and if for anyone, if you want to get access to the archives and get recordings and the show notes of this podcast and any podcast that we do in the future, there's a webpage. Once you write this down, greenlightreinvesting.com, greenlightreinvesting.com. And today's session is going to be a little bit of math involved with it, so I promise to keep it as simple as I can, but I'm going to show you the power of this math today. And if you want to see these session again, you can always go to our YouTube channel and see the video presentation as well. All right, so with that, today's topic is how to earn 15% on pretty apartments. This is what I call the speed wealth method to wealth accumulation. It's the speed wealth method to quickly getting your retirement plan back on track. You may be getting latter part of your career and your retirement plan, your 401k or IRA or whatever you may have been banking on is not where it needs to be. Well, I'm going to show you how to rapidly catch that up through apartments and the power of math. And I say pretty apartments because we have pretty apartments, we have ugly apartments. And of course, ugly apartments are the ones that need lots of rehab, that may not be necessarily in the good parts of town. They're more intensive. And we're not talking about that today. I mean, there's great returns you made on those. I'm going to show you how to make great returns on pretty properties in pretty areas that don't need any rehab, that you be comfortable showing your in-laws of the building you own, if that's an issue. So this math, I believe, is going to blow you away. So it's going to be important, no matter where you're on the spectrum. A couple of things I want to accomplish today is, number one, show you the power of the math through the use of apartment vehicles, which I don't know of any other vehicle that can do what I'm going to show you here. And also let those of you know who maybe been following for a while real estate, thinking, well, I don't want to get involved with ugly stuff or older properties or ugly properties. Don't worry, you don't need to. I'm going to show you the power of the math on pretty stuff. All right, so let's start here, and I'm going to encourage you to have paper and pencil. Certainly, if you're listening to this on the audio version, you'll be able to write down some of this math I'm going to teach you, because you're not going to believe it otherwise. Until I show it to you, you're not going to believe it. But let's start with what I was taught early on when I got introduced to real estate back in 2002. One of the first things that I was taught, at least one of the first things I still remember, which struck me, was the notion of an ideal investment. What is an ideal investment? Well, if you take the 5 letters of the word ideal, it becomes the definition of ideal. An ideal investment has income, which means it has cash flow. We generate cash flow, or we increase the cash flow on apartments by raising the revenue, raising the rents, lowering, raising other income or lowering the expenses. That's how we increase cash flow. Depreciation is the second benefit of the ideal investment, and this is tax depreciation benefits. This is where IRS, Uncle Sam, gives us a paper loss, which we can claim on our tax return and pay less taxes by the fact that we simply own buildings. I'm going to show you the power of this and the math behind this. Apartments certainly offer you depreciation. Equity is the third attribute of the ideal investment, and this is equity that we gain by the mortgage pay down on our properties. We're buying these properties using third-party financing, whether it's a bank mortgage or seller finance mortgage, whatever the vehicle is, we're buying it with a mortgage in place. Well, every month, as our tenants, what I call the residents, pay us rent, that rent goes to pay down the mortgage balance. So every month, we're building up equity in our building, our property, by the fact the mortgage is going down because our residents are paying it down for us. Apartments certainly offer that. Appreciation is the fourth attribute of the ideal investment. And this is where we increase the value of our properties, and that also builds equity for us. Now, there's two types of appreciation. One type is called market appreciation, which means value of stuff goes up even if we don't do anything. And right now, we're pretty much in a market appreciation type market. The market appreciation, but we don't have any control over that. So there's a second type of appreciation, which we do have control over, which is called forced appreciation, which basically says whenever we raise the net income of a property, and we raise the net income by raising the revenue, lowering the expenses, that also boosts the value, and that's another way we force and create equity for ourselves through forced appreciation. Apartments certainly have this. This is how fortunes are made. I'll show you the power of this math in just a moment. And then the fifth attribute, final attribute of the ideal investment, we buy the investment through leverage, using other people's money. So with apartments, typically you're going to buy these with 65 to up to 100% leverage. You actually can buy with more than 100% leverage, certainly more in the ugly property realm, where you can raise more money than you need to purchase the property and actually walk away from closing with cash. But in this scenario, I'm concentrating on pretty properties. And yes, we can get 100% financing through seller financing, where the owner just takes back monthly installment payments. So those are the five attributes of the ideal investment. When you stack up, when you're evaluating any investment, the more of these attributes that it has, the more ideal it is. Well, it turns out apartments have all five attributes. I'm going to show them to you now and the math behind them. To do this example, I'm going to take a sample property. Doesn't really matter where it is or what it looks like. It's just a math problem, because all apartments are is about the math. Let's say this is a $500,000 property. We're going to purchase it for $500,000. It's a Class B pretty property. Class B means it's a middle income property. All right, it's not a bad area. It's got middle income, middle to moderate income, or actually really, middle income residents in it, and they're paying $700 rent on average. The average rent across that property. It's an 8-unit property, so we're buying it at $62,500 per door. It's a higher price property because this is a nice property in a nice area. It's got 90% occupancy at the time we buy it. It's performing at a 6% cap rate, which it turns out the market cap rate is 6%, which basically says we're buying this at retail price. I didn't negotiate any discount at all. I'm buying the property at retail value at $500,000. Again, it's a nice area, and it doesn't need any rehab. Owner's just been, letting it do its thing for years. Nice area, nice property. And we're going to buy it, 20% down payment, $100,000 cash, and with a mortgage on it at a 4% interest rate. And I should add an example I use here. It's got 25-year amortization. So what we're going to do, based on this example right here, is look at the annual ROI over 5 years. And by the way, whether it's 500,000 or 5 million, the math is the math. It doesn't change. So let's look at the math. Now, remember, there's 5 attributes to the ideal investment. We're going to talk, one of them's leverage. We're buying it on leverage. We're going to talk about the return on income, the return on depreciation, the return on equity, and the return on appreciation. I'm going to show you and break it down for you, show how this builds up. So income, that's the first attribute. This is cash flow. We get a return on our investment because we have cash flow coming off the property. Well, what we're going to do is go into this property and we're going to tweak the rents. We're going to raise the rents 2.5%, take them from 700 to 718. All right. Let's say that the owner, classically, the self-managed owner, hasn't raised the rents in a long time. We're going to bump the rents, push them towards market rent, 2.5%. Also, we're going to build in some other income. Other income is revenue that's outside of rent. For example, charging for parking spaces, you know, a little bit per month. Utility bill back. Now, this is a very common one, is that we're going to start billing back the water bill to the residents. We're going to bill back the gas bill to the residents. Another way of raising rent. You actually could just basically start billing them. So when all your new residents come in, you're going to have this, they're actually paying a utility allowance. You can bill back for trash fees, $15 a door for trash pickup. These are how you build in other income. Now, other income on properties can range from 0% to 15%. The most I've ever seen on a property was they had 15% other income. This property had 0% income. Let's say we raise it to 3% in this example. All right. So we're working on the revenue side. At the same time, we're going to lower the expenses 5% from where they are now. Okay. We're going to get a 5% little reduction in expenses. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to go dispute the taxes, number one. Here's the two main expense areas right here is your taxes and your insurance bill. Well, you can dispute your taxes every year. So I'm going to go dispute the taxes because the current owner hasn't done that in a while. And I'm going to go shop the insurance because he's been giving this insurance to his brother-in-law all these years, or the same company all these years. He's never gone out to shop it to get his premium down. And there's other things we can do, but those are two simple ones, and those are two major offenders usually right there. So we're going to do that. We're going to lower the expenses 5%. When I make those adjustments, those little tweaks to the operation of this pretty property, my cash flow is going to be $8,400 per year. That's net. That's after paying the mortgage. That's after paying all the expenses, all the maintenance, the management fees, because we're not going to self-manage. The current owner we're buying it from was self-managing, but we're not going to fall into that trap. We're going to hire a management company, and all those fees are built in to this scenario here. So my net cash in my pocket is $8,400 a year. All right. Well, we measure this by something called the cash-on-cash return, because we're getting $8,400 back per year cash flow, but we put $100,000 down payment into it. So it's an 8.4% return on investment per year. That's our cash-on-cash return, 8.4%. Now, let's compare this to the CD you might have right now at the bank, which maybe is paying 1%. So a CD pays a 1% cash-on-cash return. Here's a pretty property paying an 8.4% cash-on-cash return. Again, passive. It's being managed. So what we're going to do, back to the I.D.E.A.L investment, the income ROI in this case is 8.4% per year return on investment on the cash, and the cash is the down payment. There's no rehab on this property. The total at the bottom where it says ROE in red, that means a return on equity. Equity means our cash in the deal. So our total return so far is 8.4% per year. Remember, I said I'm going to show you how to get 15. Let's look at the equity. This is the third attribute, I.D.E.A.L and I.D.E.A.L. Equity occurs, like I said, the tenants pay the mortgage balance down for us each and every month by the rent. Well, in the example I just gave, remember it was 80% loan to value on the mortgage, 4% interest rate on the mortgage. I ran the math, this example. After 5 years, we're going to look at a 5-year period. Over 5 years, the total mortgage pay down over 5 years is $51,000 and change. So the average equity that we gain, there's $51,500 in equity. At the end of 5 years, if we were to sell that property, we get $51,000 coming back to us as cash because we paid down the mortgage $51,000. Well, that $51,000 of equity divided by the $100,000 of cash, the down payment spread out over 5 years, is 10.3% per year return on our cash by the fact that we paid down the mortgage each year for 5 years. So, all right, so we go back to our I.D.E.A.L investment, and the contribution of equity is 10.3% per year return on investment on our cash. Now, it's not cash flow we're getting with equity. It's equity in the property because we paid on the mortgage. So now our total ROI, or return on cash that we put into the property, is 8.4%. Cash on cash from cash flow to 10.3% per year. Equity gain from paying down the mortgage. Now we've got a 18.7% per year return on our investment of cash. Now, I told you I was straight to be 15. We've already done it with the first two things. All right, we're already at 18% on a pretty property. The other attribute of the I.D.E.A.L investment is the A, appreciation. And we're talking about forced appreciation. I'm assuming zero market appreciation, zero. So with forced appreciation, what that means is anytime we do anything to raise the net income, we raise the net operating income, we raise the value of an apartment building, which means we're also creating equity for ourselves. And the formula, just so you can know, the value of an apartment building is the NOI divided by the market cap rate. In this example, happened to be 6%. So when I run the math, because I remember I raised the revenue, I raised the rent 2.5%, I put in 3% other income, and I lowered the expenses 5% in this example. So that gives me a new higher NOI. So I've raised the revenue, cut the expenses. I have a higher net income. In this example, the new value of this apartment is $563,000. Well, we bought it for $500,000, so the new equity I've gained through appreciation is $63,000. And let's just stick with this 5-year example. If I stick with that $63,000 for 5 years, and if I do nothing else, if I did nothing else for 5 years, that $63,000 equity divided by my $100,000 cash I put into it, divided by 5 years, is 12.6% per year return on my cash. Forced appreciation is how fortunes are made in this business, by tweaking the rents, getting really smart about putting other income into it, and chip it away at your expenses. All right, so we got 12.6% equity gain per year on this building. Let's add that to our I.D.E.A.L investment tally here. So now I put in I got 8.4% return on investment on cash flow. I got a 10.3% return on investment on paying down the mortgage. I got a 12.6% per year return on investment from the appreciation gain that I'm getting. So now my total return on my investment is 31% per year. Now I'm double what I told you, I promised you. All right. We're not done here. There's one more. You can see there's a blank missing there in the depreciation space. We talk about depreciation, so people don't realize the power of depreciation. And I'm going to show you how to basically pay zero income tax on whatever you're earning at your job right now. All right, so depreciation. Let me define depreciation. First of all, it is a tax benefit afforded us by the IRS on our federal taxes each year. And what depreciation means, the IRS assumes that the value of our buildings are decreasing each year. They're going down in value. In actuality, they're going up in value, but from IRS depreciation purposes, it is a paper loss. We're losing value in our buildings every year, and that lost value we can deduct on our income tax return. The paper loss. It's a paper loss. So let me give you the math here. And now, the way depreciation works, you can only depreciate the value of your building. You can't depreciate the value of land. So in this example, let's assume of the $500,000, 20% of that went to land value. So that means the building value is 80% of the $500,000 or $400,000. So the building has a value of $400,000 when we buy it. With apartments, the IRS does what's called a straight line depreciation method. They assume that over 27.5 years, after 27.5 years, the value of that building will be zero. It will be exactly opposite of that. But for terms of paper losses, you take the $400,000 divided by 27.5 years. So the IRS gives us a credit that we're losing $14,500 per year in the value of our building, and we can put that as a deduction along with your kids, your spouse, your home interest, everything. You know, it's another deduction that goes on there. In this case, it's a $14,000, $500 deduction. Now, of course, everybody has different tax rates. Let's take more of the lower end. Let's assume you're paying a 25% tax rate. So with a $14,500 deduction times 25% tax rate, that means there's $3,600 less taxes that you're paying. You're actually, if you've already paid those taxes out, Uncle Sam, from your withholding at your job, you get a check back for $3,600. Or it could mean you could lower your withholding and keep $3,600 throughout the year because you're not going to have to pay as much tax. Matter of fact, you can own enough property and take the full deduction credit and pay zero income tax on your job income. There's a challenge for you. Go buy enough apartments, and by the way, using other people's money, buy enough apartments using other people's money, and you'll pay zero income tax on your jobs, your job income. So that $3,600 per year tax savings in this example, again, $3,600 per year tax savings, that's cash to us. There's $100,000 down payment, cash went into the property. It's a 3.6% per year return on cash. This is cash back to us in the form of tax savings. Now, one thing to do this, let me just one little caveat. In order to declare 100% of the deduction each year, you have to declare yourself a real estate professional. That does not mean you have a real estate license. It has nothing to do with having a real estate license. It means you spend 750 hours per year on your real estate business, which is 15 hours per week. So if you're doing this part-time and you're evaluating properties, making offer, doing all of, just you're spending at least 15 hours a week, and your CPA simply needs to check the box on your tax return, declare you a real estate professional, and you get to take 100% of those tax deduction savings. If you don't declare a real estate professional, the IRS limits your deduction to $3,500 per year. So in this case, you had a $14,500 deduction. They would clamp it to $3,500 unless you declare yourself a real estate professional. So check that out with your CPA. But if you're a real estate professional, you could have $145,000, $1.4 million of depreciation and claim that 100% in the current year. Now, one other thing on this, I'm going to move on to depreciation. This 3.6% per year return on cash, that's your minimum, because I took the most simplest form of depreciation. You can actually accelerate the depreciation through something called componentizing, which simply says the building will depreciate over 27.5 years, but the IRS will allow us to depreciate the appliances, the AC equipment on shorter schedules, and you can break it up. You can accelerate it. So instead of getting a 3.6% per year return on your cash, you can get 4%, 5%, 6% or more, depending upon the rigor in which you depreciate legally the equipment besides the building. But for this example, I'm taking the most conservative approach. We've got 3.6% per year return on cash. All right, so now we add that to our tally. I don't know why that says 4.3, it's 3.6. So our return on investment, let's do the math here. That 4.3 and depreciation, I guess it should be 3.6. So 8.4, we actually got 35.6. I'm going to correct it just a little bit. 34.9% per year is your total return on cash. Now remember, I told you I'm showing you how to get 15. I'm showing more than double that. On a pretty property that is managed by a professional management company, you don't deal with dentists, you don't deal with toilets, there's no rehab, it's a nice area. You buy these, you set them, and you forget them. This is the speed wealth approach. All right. So what are your exit strategies? What do you do with it? Well, you got options. You could always sell the property and cash out, take all your equity, cash it out, you pay taxes. Here's the good news. You're paying long-term capital gains tax, which is the lowest tax rate you're going to pay. So that's not the worst thing in the world. But if you really want to speed wealth on steroids, what you're going to do is refinance that building, harvest your equity as cash, and use that cash as down payment on another building, do the same thing again. Now you own 2 properties, paying you 30% return on your cash. And a third option you have, if you do want to sell this building, well, you would sell it on a 1031 exchange, which is another IRS benefit to us, which means if I sell it, take all the cash, harvest the equity as cash, as long as I reinvest that cash in another building within 6 months, I pay no taxes. And I can do that over and over and over. There's no limitation how many times I do it, and I actually can pass that on to my heirs. The whole point here is that we're using leverage, we're using all the different ways of getting return on our investment, and we're not paying taxes. The only thing we're paying taxes on is the cash flow, but that's passive income, which is the lowest tax rate you're also going to pay is on passive income. That's why apartments are labeled the I.D.E.A.L investment. I'm not the one labeling it. This has been recognized this way for, over 100 years. This is why I do apartments. This is why I teach people to do apartments. Why I'm in Dallas, Texas, teaching more people to get started, speed wealthing their way to wealth creation and getting their retirement plans back on track, starting with small and then scaling up. Because that's really going to be your strategy. You're going to start small, get 30% return on a small property, take the equity, roll it over into a larger property, and with 3 or 4 moves, you could be done. So let me ask you this question. Where else could you do this with your cash? Let's recap what we did. Pretty property, this example, the nice area, $700 a month rent, $62,000 a door. We bought it at retail price. I didn't even take into consideration negotiating a discount. I just paid retail price. I'm not dealing with tenants, not dealing with toilets. I'm hiring professional management companies. There's no rehab involved. And what we've done is shown you the way to accelerate your retirement catch-up plan and what I call the speed wealth method through pretty properties in apartments. All right, that's what I wanted to show you in today's session on Greenlight REI. If you are here with me live today listening to this, and I'm going to take some questions, and I'm going to invite you to submit your questions now. The way you do that here on this webinar is submit them through the chat box, and I'll answer your questions. All right, what I'm going to do too, by the way, which might help, I'm going to go back to the slide. I go back here, which had the math summarized. All right, let's see, let me get the questions brought up here. Here they come. Hey, Dave, here's Dave Allen. Hey, Dave. Lance, do you know much about investing in residential assisted living homes? Yeah, I do. I do. I've actually looked at that. And it's the same thing here. The only difference with assisted living is that you have a business overlaying the apartment. And when I've looked at it, I've always looked at it in the context of I provide the property and lease it to an assisted living service provider, and they provide me rent. And it comes to the category of what I call special needs area. Well, I will collect premium rent because they're running a business through my property. Well, because I'm getting premium rent, the numbers are going to be even higher because your cash on cash is going to be higher. I'm showing a cash on cash on the income on this slide here, showing 8.4% return on investment on cash flow. When you get into, now I'm going to tell you, one of the benefits of ugly properties, you're going to get much higher cash on cash. You're going to get, 12%, 14%, 16, 18% cash on cash. That's the benefit of ugly properties. It's also the benefit, you could have a pretty property and put assisted living operations in there, collect the premium rent, and get a higher cash on cash that way. But that's how I would address in short period of time the answer to that. It's a great niche. It's a great special needs niche, and obviously a big demand for it because baby boomers. All right, thank you for that question, Dave. We've got one. Leroy asked, do you buy these properties as part of your Apartment Buyer Society program? You bet, Leroy. That's what we're looking for. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I do both pretty and ugly, but I want to show you pretty. Pretty. Absolutely. This is what we do in the Apartment Buyer Society program. Let's see. Lance, is the recording available? I missed some of this. Yeah, go to greenlightreinvesting.com. I'll show it here in a minute. Greenlightreinvesting.com, before we post the recordings, all the past podcasts, and the show notes for this one. So it'll be coming up. This is live right now at the moment. Let's see. Dave had a follow-up question on his assisted living. Would there be two LLCs, one for the business side and one for the real estate side? Yes, I would do it that way. But again, I wouldn't personally be running the assisted living business. I don't know anything about that. That's not my business. I would go partner with someone who does and let them pay me rent for the use of my building. But if you're going to do it yourself, Dave, I would have one LLC for the property, one LLC for the assisted living service business, which is very common. Matter of fact, pretty much every hotel you stay in, one entity owns the property, another entity operates it. Same as the one I'm in right now. Let's see. Here's a question from Ramon. Hey, Ramon. Hey, hi. Where can I get automatic calculations on the building? Well, if you mean automatic calculations, you mean a calculator. I'll put a plug in for us. If you're in one of my clients, one of our students, we have something called the I.D.E.A.L calculator. Well, it's really the I.D.E.A.L property evaluator, which does these calculations for you. That's what I was using to give you the samples. And it breaks it down. It plays what ifs. It's pretty cool because every time you evaluate, let me just share this with you. This is why I love apartments. Ever since when I first got exposed to it so many years ago, is because I can evaluate what ifs on a property without even seeing it. It's just a math problem. You just saw what I did here. I can play what ifs on a property evaluator software like mine and see what's going to happen over time. What if I did this? What if I did that? So the decision to buy a property is a evaluation up front of what's the minimum number of things I need to do to get a 15% return. Well, you just saw here with small stuff, I got a 35% return. I could, if my threshold was simply 15% return, you could see how much less I even have to do to get 15% return. And so the cool thing with my property evaluator, I can evaluate what's the minimum I need to do to this property and get at least a 15% return. Oh, that's pretty simple. Let's go buy it. But I think I can see what you guys are thinking right now. This is where I want you to be. It's pretty easy to get 15% returns, even on pretty stuff. All right, let's see. Hope that answered your question. So if you'd like to get involved, go to Greenlight REI. But we offer calculators and that stuff. That's part of the training side of the business. All right, here's Paul has a question about what price per door should we be looking for? It depends. It depends. And price per door is a phenomenon that it's a guideline we use to evaluate properties. And it depends upon whether you're looking at ugly properties versus pretty properties. And it also depends whether you're looking at Class A, B, or C properties. And by the way, I didn't go into, this was a Class B example. You can run Class A examples and still get 15% return back on Class A's through exactly the same methodology I just showed you. So the price per door, anyway, come back to the question. Price per door is it an ugly property you're buying or a pretty property? Is it a Class B? Is it a Class C? Is it a Class A? And also what market are you in? So there's some variables in there. And of course, we teach that in our programs. But main thing I want to point out here for this podcast, purpose of this podcast, is you can get 15% return on Class A properties. All right, let's see. Paul said, thank you. You're welcome. Deborah, how do you work out the utility bill backs? Can you give an example of, say, the water bill? Sure. There's different ways you can do it. You can do the most basic way you can do a utility bill back. Because let me explain. First of all, in utilities, normally the owner pays the water, the owner pays the gas. There's a single meter. There's a single water meter for the entire 8. Let's stick with the 8-unit example. There's a single water meter, and the landlord gets a water bill every month for the water. Well, you could take that and divide it by 8 and send that, just bill the residents. So if it's, I don't know, $200, it's $25 per month bill on water. Or you can just, and I see this a lot, you can just, when someone moves in, tell them you're going to pay X dollars per month as a water allowance. Just basically, it's a rent increase without calling it rent. Same thing with the gas. You do the same thing with gas. I mentioned the trash. I've seen $15 per month for trash pickup. I've seen different other income for the fact that you're moving into a property that has new carpet. You pay a premium for new carpet. You could pay a premium for being on the second floor versus the first floor, or vice versa. You could pay a premium for a view of the lake rather than the parking lot. And this is where the creativity comes into the business, and where your management company will help you, is building in that other income, because I just showed you indirectly the power of it. And, most properties, especially small, they've got like 0% other income. Well, you can just add on to that. Add on to that. The best property I've ever seen run is 15%. 15%. All right, let's see. Deborah, hope to answer your question about bill backs. Let's see. There's one from Elliot. Hey, Elliot, since properties like this are usually not distressed and are on the MLS, how does your offer price relate to asking price? Great question, Elliot. So let's say this example, I found it on MLS, where I found a pretty property. Now, well, first of all, run your math to see what you could afford to pay to give whatever total return you want. And you could have 3 tiers. You could have, here's my price for a great deal, here's my price for a good deal, here's my walkaway price. Then it's just a matter of negotiation, how motivated the seller happens to be. But the great news is, let's say you run the math just like I showed you, and you could pay full price. You could pay their asking price. Well, now that's your walkaway price. You've got something that'll give you at least 15% ROI if I pay asking price. Now everything's a bonus. But really, the answer comes down to, motivation of the seller and your negotiation. All right, now I can't get my questions back. Here they are. Let's see. I gotta have some other questions I haven't answered yet. Deborah said, thank you. You're welcome, Deborah. This question from Andrew. Hey, Andrew. This is on depreciation. When it comes to componentizing an asset to accelerate certain items for depreciation purposes, is it wise to use that strategy along with a shorter hold time strategy for the asset, like 7 or 10 years or 15 years? Once the asset is depreciated or out, clearly the taxable income from cash flow would go way up. Well, let me just restate the question, because it's a great question. So, first of all, should you accelerate your depreciation and hold the property for a shorter period of time? You absolutely could do that, because on these properties, there's a different way to look at it. Maybe you're gonna extract all the juice out of the property in the first 2 or 3 years, and then it kind of stabilizes, and you're not getting this. You get your highest return on investment in years 2 and 3, and then it kind of starts tailoring off, because you can't do any more to improve it in years 4 and 5. If that was the case, a good strategy could be, okay, then I'm going to maximize my return on investment, and by year 3, my strategy will be to 1031 exchange out of this property into another one, and then squeeze 3 more years out of that one. And that's a strategy I teach called leverage and velocity. Leverage means you're buying the property using people's money. Velocity means you harvest the equity as fast as you can and roll it over into something else. Or instead of 1031 exchanging it, you could refinance the property after 3 years, hold on to it, and then use the cash you harvested from refinancing and do the same thing there. But the choice of whether you say 3 years or 30 years, it can be a personal preference. You don't want to mess with it too much. It's kind of a set it and forget it, then you let it sit there. But if you really want to maximize the juice, then you would be moving them every few years, and you would be maximizing the depreciation through componentizing to accelerate that ROI as well. That's a great question. Hope that response made sense. Let's see. Okay. I'll do this last question. Andrew says, how have you purchased properties at the asking price? I mean, the numbers worked for you and you did not need a substantial discount to make the purchase work. No, I don't know, I can't bring myself to do it. But having said that, that's just me. That's just me. The good news is you could be, paying asking price. I always want to go get, and I should add this. Personally, I believe if you offer full price to a seller, their immediate thought is going to be they didn't ask for enough. And so you should always go in at something less than asking price and give them the psychological benefit of, bidding you up. They're not expecting to get, rarely are they expecting to get their full asking price, unless they just know it's just a sweetheart deal. That's rare. So you should always go in with less, just from a psychological negotiation standpoint. All right. Let's see. And Paul said, and seller financing. Yes, I'm not sure what the comment was about, but the one thing I'll add to this is, and certainly in small apartments, not limited to small apartments, seller financing is available to you, which means no banks involved, none. And oh, by the way, I need to answer one last question. I almost skipped this. Matter of fact, I've got an offer out right now on a building with seller financing. It's this one happens to be an ugly one, but seller financing is very common in small apartments. Very common. All right, here's the question I forgot to answer. Where was it? Basically, it was what is the best way to market for investors to partner in these deals? Well, I'm not going to get into where to find and private investor. That's not the purpose of this podcast. But I will say this. I know that this is a question that some of you are having right now. This example I have is $100,000 down payment, right? Remember that? $100,000 down payment. And maybe saying, well, Lance, I don't have $100,000 down payment. Well, okay. How hard do you think it would be to raise a private investor to put up $100,000 if you give them a piece of the 35% annual return? You can give them part of the back end. Now, they won't get the depreciation. Well, you could structure it. They could get all the depreciation benefit if you wanted to. You actually can assign the depreciation to your money partner if you wanted to. But let's say you kept the depreciation for yourself. So that's 35 minus 4. You got 31% per year ROI, and you're now free to give no more than 31% per year return to your private investor for $100,000. Matter of fact, you may say, well, I can't get credit to get qualified for the loan. Fine, let your investor put that up too. Let's say you gave them half the deal, excluding depreciation. You got 31% ROI. They're getting half. They're getting 15% return on investment. on their $100,000, they're putting up the credit for the financing. That puts you in business right there. That's simple. Which is another advantage for seeing the math I just showed you, because your bottom line ROI tells you how much you have to play with in raising private money. Even if you got to give half away. I don't necessarily want you to give me half away, but my point is I want to show you another reason why you want to get into apartments, because the math is so strong. There's plenty to go around for your private investor. And then, by the way, you'll use it when you cash it out. You probably might want to do a short term. You want to cash them out as soon as you can by refinancing the property. So now all that ROI is going back to you. Now you're in a position to sell it, upgrade, using none of your own cash, because you started with seed money through the private investor. So that's which is, didn't want to give detail on private money, but I did want to make the point. Do not let the fact that you don't have $100,000, like in this example, think you're disqualified. Absolutely not. Your job, find a deal, put it together, structure it, get control of it, get under contract, then go find a private investor. All right, so with that, we're going to wind down. Hey, I appreciate the great questions. We're going to wind down this episode of Greenlight REI. Listen to the archives, the recording, and the show notes of this episode. Go to greenlightreinvesting.com. At that webpage, you'll find not only this archive, but archives of all our past podcasts. And you get access to recordings and other free stuff, free training that you want to avail yourself of. So please go to greenlightreinvesting.com and check it all out. Until the next time, the next session of Greenlight REI, make your lifestyle a successful real estate one. Take care, everyone.